Okay, roll call for March 23rd. Chair Horn.
Here.
Vice Chair Grook. Here. Secretary Pomahawk is here. Alderman Mayor, I believe, will be joining us in a little while. Commissioner Cieslak.
Here.
Commissioner Sharma.
Here.
And Commissioner Nemec.
Here.
All right, next we'll do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll do citizen comment period at 7:01. Are there any citizens present that would like to make a comment? Okay, no comments, and we'll close it at 7:01. Next, we'll do approval of minutes. We had the February 23rd.
I need a clarification on the minutes. Under unfinished business for the Arbor Day, the ordering of the trees, the way I am reading it, we have 350 saplings on order. I added it, so that is the total. Okay, normally when we order through Washington County Tree and Seed Program. Who did we order from this year?
Corrections to the minutes.
I think the same company. Oh, so we're getting oaks from, Tom said we were getting them from, I forgot the company, but we were getting them for free, and then I believe he was ordering the rest of them from Washington as well.
Okay, just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure we're going through the right channels.
Yes,
for
so
this.
Tom was ordering it, and I believe there actually needs to be a correction where it says Tom Rhea is ordering the trees, not Jim Cieslak.
I'd be happy to, but
I know you would, but I think that was the one error I noticed after I reread it.
I did give her an amendment to both that paragraph and to another paragraph later that I noticed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought there should be the clarification there on the trees, and then the seeds were separate. Do we need to read through these?
I captured a correction of city forester, not Commissioner Cieslak. Are there any other questions?
Okay, so I'm entering in the correction to tree order by City Forester Tom Rhea.
Yep. And then Jim Cieslak is the one that ordered the seeds. And what was the other one?
Then VC, did you want to comment on your other correction here?
I just gave you the only two corrected versions I had.
The other areas
I
for
kind of
native habitat?
revised for a considerably to say something to the effect of pictures with children and their flower seeds could be posted in the city newsletter or other venues if the parents wish to submit them. If you, Madam Chair, if you want to go ahead and read what I printed, I'm trying to remember exactly how I worded
Oh, okay.
it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, sure. So yeah, this is still an item 4A. The native wildflower seed packets are being put together by Commissioner Cieslak with support from Wisconsin Metro Audubon and Where Wild Ones. The goal is to have 50 packets to hand out to the children at the Arbor Day event. The handout with the seeds will encourage families to take pictures of the gardens they create and share them with the city for display at future events. And then I think the rest of this, the more information was...
It was added. It was in
Yeah,
there.
that's there. And then the federal. So,
We will give this to you, Pat, if you want it.
Oh, Jim gave it to me
Oh, got
here.
it, okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to say see attached that Jim gave me.
Okay.
And then in 5C, which was the Native Habitat Restoration Project, revisions to the wording to say Commissioner Cislak proposes identifying other areas in the city for native habitat restoration once the projects at the 35th Street Stream Bank and the new Water Tower Park restorations are complete.
And that is under unfinished as well?
New business.
That's under new business?
5C.
5C.
So instead of just saying, will suggest identifying areas after projects between 35th Street, Stream Bank, and Watertown Park restoration are done.
And my only other question, we appear to be indicating it as Water Tower Park.
Yeah, we should probably lowercase it and not make it a name.
That does not have an official name.
Yeah, that's how we all identify it.
Well-
Should we say Lovers Lane Water Tower Parcel? Would probably be a better identifier for that? Okay. That's how we always talk about it that way.
I know.
So yeah, that was in new business. I think it shows up B 2 times in B, C, maybe other areas.
Okay, under new business where?
B, item B, it's in there twice, and then also C.
So we're just keeping the lowercase, not identifying it as an actual designated
Yeah.
park to date. When I read that, it was so funny because I drove by and I just was kind of looking for some demarcation or something. And I said, what am I missing? Okay.
Would it be better to say something like parcel currently known as?
Yeah, that's kind of what we can always just add the parcel. And I don't know, we should
Yeah.
identify parcel 12587. It's gonna be called Dan Mayer Park, that's why.
All right, so I think we need.
I'll go ahead and approve the minutes with those corrections.
Make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And now, since we have, I presume it's the fiduciary folks are in the audience, that we would jump to new business item A. Is there any opposition to that? Okay, this is for the natural resource features special exception application by fiduciary real estate development. And are you gonna give us an overview, or?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So this natural resource special exception stems from a development that will be occurring on South 27th Street. So the addresses are 9801 South 27th Street and 9605 South 29th. That second parcel is this small lot here on the north end of the property. So it's right on the boundary of the city across the street from Oak Creek. In fact, Oak Creek runs just north of the property, and a portion of the parcel includes the floodplain. So I'm just going to run you through the site plan quickly. These applicants, this is a commercial residential development. The property is zoned B4. So they have requested site plan approval for this development, which is 12 buildings on the 24-acre property with a total of 252 residential units. The natural resource special exception is necessitated by the fact that there is a wetland complex that runs through it bisects the parcel. So this is north. Apologize, I didn't put arrows today. But this is north, so it runs from the northeast to the southwest across the parcel. This wetland complex connects to Oak Creek. It's part of that watershed, and over here is a conservation area the Milwaukee Area Land Conservancy owns. Secondary environmental corridor. So there's no secondary environmental corridor on the property, but it is nearby, and this wetland is an important connection for that. So they're not proposing to alter the hydrology of the site, but as you can see, because of the configuration of the wetland, it would not be possible to access the back of the property without wetland impacts. So they are also proposing to impact young woodlands and mature woodlands on the property in addition to the wetland setback and buffer. But the request doesn't exceed the allowances of the UDO, so that's not part of the discussion this evening. It's simply a point of information. They are proposing mitigation for young woodlands, even though they're not exceeding the standards, just because they're right on the line. So it was appropriate, and since they're required to provide landscaping, they're proposing to do that. So the wetland complex is about 2.22 acres. There's 3 acres of young woodland and 2.17 acres of mature woodland. And then the request is for impacts to the wetland buffer, and setback. So in the report, it describes these impacts, which are 528.41 square feet of temporary grading impact to the wetland, 142.48 square feet of permanent structural footprint. So that's for the culverts for this road crossings, for a total of 670.89 square feet of wetland impact. So they have obtained DNR permits for these impacts. It should be noted that there is a slight discrepancy between the square footage calculations, but it still meets the acreage is the same. So we have requested clarification of that from the DNR. We haven't heard back yet. They're super busy. So, but that clarification will be required before this can proceed and be finalized. So wetland buffer, 3,028 square feet of temporary grading impacts are proposed, and then 4,990 square feet of permanent impacts, and then also impacts to the setback, which are allowed under our ordinances but required to be restored. So, and if there's permanent impacts, you have to provide for that as well. So 24,251 square feet of temporary impacts, and then 3,684 square feet of permanent impacts. So the applicants actually, I think in your packet, did provide a copy of their DNR analysis. So that's appreciated because it allows you to see kind of the discussion that happened with the DNR as well. So they're proposing restoration as required and also mitigation. So this is the natural resource protection plan. They're proposing restoration and mitigation. So these are the areas of wetland, setback, and buffer impacts. Here, young woodlands and mature woodlands, mostly around the perimeter, and then there's additional impacts proposed to the setback. So the mitigation areas are, sorry, this mouse is the worst, are here, and again, they're proposing more than is required. Because some of the mitigation areas are adjacent to stormwater ponds, proposed areas for water management on the site, those are required to be protected under an easement. Mitigation areas are likewise protected to be required to be protected under an easement, and there's potentially a conflict in terms of maintenance there. So the conservation easement, I know this commission's discussing this under another item, but occasionally we allow for changes to conservation easements to allow for things like maintenance. So there will be a discussion with staff about how best to manage that conflict so that the applicants can perform maintenance on a stormwater pond without disturbing their required mitigation. So generally speaking, the application is reasonable. I was not the reviewer for this, but in this case, it was substantially complete when they finally submitted. And they did go through a pretty extensive review process with the DNR. So the applicants are here if the commission has questions for them. The proposed conditions are largely the same as your usual set of conditions, that they submit the required conservation easements for protected natural resources at the end of this process. and for the mitigation areas, that they obtain all the regulatory approvals that are necessary. Financial sureties, which we've discussed previously, and Plan Commission can require that for landscaping and for mitigation. So a recommendation that the applicants place markers so that it's clear where the no-go areas are on the property for future maintenance. There are some technical corrections that are necessary to the NRPP, and then we also had a discussion about wetland species. So again, if there are questions, please let me know. The applicants are here.
I don't have a question necessarily, but I do have a statement. This is probably one of the best NRSEs we've actually looked at. I personally believe that, just based on, we had the description of it, we were given the Department of Natural Resources, and also talking about how like the financial stability or availability of the project, which really made a lot of sense to me. Like, if I let less apartments, you're not going to make any money on it. So I really appreciated that in comparison. I also like how you are going to be making sure that you're taking care of those fuel tanks that are currently on the site, which is part of that mitigation, I believe, and that you were trying to save as much natural resources for this property as possible. So I do appreciate all of that. So I think this is a really good project. I don't know about anybody else. The only thing is as we talked about, is those wildflowers and stuff you're going to be using for the wetlands. I'm not sure if those are any like, I didn't check them. I looked through them and tried spotting, but I would make sure that we're using all native plants for those wetlands, and as well as looking at maybe our tree list to make sure that when we're putting those conifers in and or any other type of landscaping trees, that we're using our tree list that we have set forth to kind of utilize for our street trees and et cetera. Otherwise, I really liked it. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the project.
Okay, I have a question. Are you the same group that has the Seasons at Orchard Hill,
Yes, we do, yep.
which is about 2 years old, if I'm not mistaken?
Correct. Yeah.
And that is just down the road on 27th,
Correct.
across east, so it would be Oak Creek.
Yep.
Okay, I viewed that on Monday, and I was quite impressed, and I see you also had some challenges with natural resource special exceptions, did you not?
We sure did.
Hey, more so than ours.
Yeah, and that project, we were, there were a lot of artificial wetlands, so we actually went through that process and then got them exempted for a portion of it because it was coming across through a culvert, and then it was an apple orchard previously, and so there was a lot of ditches and things that were man-made and kind of put into it, so a lot of it did come out as artificial.
Yeah, because I see the name for this project is Seasons at Franklin,
Correct.
and I'm thinking, Seasons at Orchard Hills, where are they getting the orchard from?
Oh, yep, it was because the prior orchard.
Versus,
so we
you know,
wanted to tie
Seasons
it
at
back.
Oak Creek, you know, so it would have been comparable, yeah.
Yep. We always try to tie it to the location, you know, or to a descriptor, you know, something that kind of really defines the area.
I'd just like to add to Commissioner Gorak's statement. I was very impressed with your plan. You didn't gloss over some of the crud you've run into in this property. And I get one question that came to mind as I finished reading this is, well, maybe more than one, are you doing soil testing after you've dug out all these tanks and whatnot to make sure you're not going to build an apartment on top of an old gasoline pit?
Correct. Yeah. So we do go.
Yeah,
So-
we'll make sure that we're excavating all the impacted soil that needs to be excavated,
Super.
coordinating that with the DNR,
Yeah.
reporting to the DNR.
No, I really liked your plan. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think it's an excellent use. I happen to go to the doctor right down the street, and it's like, oh, God, don't make me look at this anymore. So this will be nice.
Yes, it's definitely a challenging site, but we're excited
Yeah.
for it.
And I do like your remediation plan, too. It's very well thought out, I thought.
The question about alternative analysis, is that something you have done?
Yeah, we went through the alternative analysis process with the DNR. So that's where a handful of the package came from as well.
How did you come up with the percentage increase that look same across the board?
Well, how did we come up with what?
The percentage increase,
Percent increase?
yeah, like alternative 2 has 265% increase, alternative 3 has 132.
Oh, because a lot of the costs still apply across the board. So like, in order for us to put in our clubhouse, we still have that set cost, even though we would have less units. When we have more units, we can kind of spread those costs across all of that, and you would kind of get a reduction from it. So that's where you're kind of seeing those increases. We still have a lot of the same set costs. I mean, to go through cleaning up the site, purchasing the site, doing a lot of those other things, that cost is the same regardless of the number of units. So that's where that came from.
Right, but I mean, is it a differential from, regardless, you're building something, so you have a base cost, but you're coming up with 265, is that a differential increase?
I think the difference comes by the amount of buildings. So I think for option 2, there's only like 6 buildings, because you guys weren't using the south or northwest site. So that's why the cost is different. So the proposed site has 12 buildings, and that's why it's at 109%, versus that option 2 had only, I believe, 6 buildings, because they weren't using half of the site.
Right.
So that's why the percent is different. So by having more buildings, they will reduce the percent. Having less buildings has the percent at a higher amount.
That's what I was thinking, but then it says clubhouse and amenities, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like, so you'd have one clubhouse, so why is that
Yeah.
265% increase?
Got it. So you're wondering why going down the column is the same amount
Right.
per the row? I can't explain that.
Right. That's, but yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
We can move on to other questions.
Yeah, it was based off of the units. Yeah, it should be based on the percentage of those units, and so then you're getting that percentage across the board.
But clubhouse is going to be one regardless of how many.
Right, but then,
units.
like, if you look at the clubhouse, like if we're at alternative 3, it's only 132%. So you'd go from that original, which was, if I remember correctly, it was like 276 units, and then as you come down to like alternative 4, which is the 252, now you're still just sitting at 109% increase, versus if you had a clubhouse, it'd be straight 100. If that makes
Okay.
sense. Sorry.
That's all right.
Just want to say, I'm usually not in favor of apartments, but these are very attractive. Usually today, so often today, we have the square boxes that you see everywhere in apartments, but this seems like a little different. It looks very attractive. I think you did a nice job with the plan, and I support it. And it's apartments in the Oak Creek Franklin School District, which
Correct.
I think is good too.
And they don't want any money. They're not asking for any.
Not
tax
asking for any
incremental
tip.
finance.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Yep, that was a nice start.
Yes. Wow. But no, I think you did a nice job.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Tom, did you have any
The only
questions?
the only thing I was looking at, I don't know if this is environmental or not, but if there's a secondary access to this location.
Oh, yep, so thank you. There is a secondary access there, so there's an existing gravel road, which I believe is considered 29th Street. And so that will stay, and then we'll try to make some improvements to it without doing any sort of additional impacts to those wetlands there. So we'll look to kind of probably clean up the top of the gravel, dig some of that out, and then look to try to get that paved. So it will just be used for emergency access, for like fire truck access. But the main, there's only one access point for the residents.
I guess I'd still be concerned in the winter if it snows or something, but, I love the idea. I think it's great to get more housing in the area. Develop that area. I think 27th has kind of been needing something like this. But yeah, that was just my concern is, from a safety factor. And not that someone would want to block that road, but what if, you know, it does get blocked, now what do you do? You know, I just, that's all my concern. So I don't know, like, and I don't know if that's an environmental thing or more of a planning thing.
And that'll be reviewed by fireplace as well.
Okay,
Correct, yeah.
yeah. I'm not on that commission.
Yeah, I concur with the others. It looks like a good plan, a nice development for the area. One question I have, looks like there's a lot of pavement, blacktop, whatever that's going to be in the area. Any of the turf areas, have you considered like doing any type of like rain gardens, things like that, or non-mowable grass, things like that?
We have not looked at that, but I don't know if you guys also got that landscape package there. I mean, we do have quite a bit of the like native seed mix in the area. The turf is really kind of maintained within the sidewalks themselves. So this is quite a bit less turf than we have typically done in our projects.
I seem to recall reading that you were doing a rather extensive environment area with native seed.
Correct.
So I think it'll be excellent offset.
There's quite a bit there.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take to create this plan?
There were a few iterations. It was an effort. I can't really put a time frame on it.
Couple of years? About a year? And there's a lot of work here. I mean, you guys did a great job. So.
According to the DNR packet, they got something in January 4th of 2019.
Yeah, I saw something in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's been a
2
while.
years. Yeah.
And there has been other people who've looked at this site, so some of that did come from their portion of it. You know, for us, we've definitely been working on it for over a year. It took quite a bit of work. It's a challenging site. There's definitely a lot of different elements to look at, so it took some time to get to this spot.
No, it's a wonderful site.
Yeah.
Do we need to make a motion?
Yes, any other questions, comments?
No.
Right, then I guess we need to a motion.
Do we have a pre-planned motion for this one?
Probably, if I may.
Do you?
I believe I do.
Okay.
That we would recommend approval of this natural resource special exception, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall submit conservation easements for areas of preserved natural resources for Common Council review and approval prior to any land disturbing activities. The applicant shall obtain all necessary approvals from federal and state regulatory agencies prior to any land disturbing activities. The applicant shall provide for financial sureties for implementation of restoration as permitted by the ordinance so listed. The applicant shall place boulders or other markers to demarcate the wetland setback on the property. The applicant shall make required technical corrections according to a UDO 15-4.010 and 15-70200 to natural resource protection plans as provided in staff review comments that were dated March 14th, 2022. And lastly, the applicant shall provide for restoration of native wetland species in the delineated wetlands.
What was that last one?
The last one, and this is the sixth one, James, the applicant shall provide for restoration of native wetland species in the delineated wetlands.
I guess that last comment, restoration of native wetland species in the delineated wetlands, the wetlands that are not being touched, or that are existing wetlands that aren't being touched, or
That is the way that condition is worded. I did not have an opportunity to discuss it with Keith, who reviewed this. So so presumably it refers to restoration of native wetland species where appropriate, so as part of the restoration and mitigation plan, but,
How do you want me to correct that? Of native wetland species
In the wetland mitigation areas, or?
correct.
in wetland mitigation
Yeah.
area? Very good.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
And I guess we'll do a roll call vote on
Yeah, we'll
this.
do a roll call on this. Okay, so I made the motion, James seconded, okay. Chair Horn,
Aye.
Vice Chair Grope. Aye. Secretary Pomahawk, aye. Alderman Mayor,
Aye.
Commissioner Cieslak,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharma,
Aye.
Commissioner Nemec.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Motion carries.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Happy building.
I'll be driving by and watching it.
I want a discount.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Folks, thank you.
Now I suggest going back to unfinished business. Item A, Environmental Commission involvement in Arbor Day 2022, May 7th. I received an email from Root Pike that they would like to participate with us. Let me see if I can find it here. They have two different displays that they would like to, let's see here. Two different displays, potentially. They have a stormwater runoff model, and they may also have a new pop-up tent display about native plants that they would like to bring. So that would be probably 2 tables worth. I told them hopefully we're outside, weather permitting. Otherwise, we might be inside or under the canopy, but they are interested in participating. I said I thought we should have room for them, especially if we're outside. So I don't know if Wild Ones, do you know if they're coming? Does anyone know if they're coming? or-
I can tell you that I've heard both things from Wild Ones, that they didn't want to come and then they did.
Oh.
But the head is still in Panama enjoying her vacation, so waiting for her to return for a couple of reasons. I just passed out a copy of a flyer that will go with the seed packet.
Okay.
Rather than just hand the kids a bunch of seeds in a package with no clue as to what to do or where or how or why, I put together a one-page little flyer that will be attached to each packet. So it's going to be revised at least one more time, depending upon what the Wild Ones decide they want to add to it or if they want to participate. But as it stands, this will accompany a very nice package of native wildflower seeds of a mixed, as you can see, a mixed variety. And there's one more that I just decided to add to it. But our friends at Audubon have agreed to pay for most of this, by the way.
Wow, great.
So,
I like the idea of the picture there too. I like that.
yeah, I wanted to make sure we encouraged
Yeah.
them
that's
to get
great.
back. And we will post them on our Audubon website and our Facebook page if we are given the information.
Great.
And in our newsletter. So, yes, I think it'll be a good event. I do have a problem with the garden, the 32 plant garden giveaway. They're all sold out. There are, I think it's either 24 or 32 plant mixed boxes that you can pick, like up to 8 species of plants. but the two main nurseries, Prairie and Prairie Moon, are both sold out of their pre-planned garden kits for the season. And, you know, they'll still have something, you know, interesting and attractive, I think, but I will probably have to modify how we view that as a pre-planned garden. You'll be able to select, you know, from about 50 different seed choice or plant types, and you'll get like 30 seeds, or not seeds, but plants. And the price will be less slightly, so you'll have another $20 or so to spend
All right.
on goodies for after the event.
Could we utilize what they had for that pre-planned garden and identify those species for like an idea? Like, oh, you can use these species to do this.
Oh, yes.
That might
Yeah.
be helpful. That way we can even use the pictures still. And
Yeah,
say, like,
I'm trying to see, you know, how far along. I'll probably end up calling both Prairie and Prairie Moon. But they're very cooperative. They want to participate in events like this. And, I mean, we'll come up with, you know, possibly as many as 25 suggested for plants, if you want to do it in the sun versus in the shade,
Oh, that'd be nice.
you know, that kind of stuff. So it will be nicely put together.
Lots of water. Okay, are there any other groups that we're aware of that want to come or that we should seek out? I don't think so. Okay, anything else on Arbor Day? All right. Moving on to item B, review of articles for City of Franklin newsletter. Pat, have you heard back from the high school at all?
No, I have not. And you saw my letter to Patrick Gain? He has not responded, which is most unusual.
Spring break?
That is true. Thank you for reminding me, because he is always, the nature of my letter, which Linda knows about, and I might as well announce at this meeting, my term as commissioner is up the end of April, and I've served on this commission for 7 years. So, again, next meeting in April will be my last. And one of my reasons or decisions happens to be the gentleman I'm looking at right now, Alderman Mayer, who has served as, again, a mentor for me for the past 7 years. And you could realize some of the initial meetings I attended as being what they call a fish out of water. And he kind of calmly guided me through, so much so that I was, like I say, motivated to go for my certification as a Wisconsin Master Naturalist a number of years ago through Weir Nature Center. But again, I just wanted to thank Alderman Mayer for the support he's given me, and I think we leave together, Dan.
You know, I don't get emotional.
Oh, do.
But thank you, Pat. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with you for the last 7 years. I've been here 9 years, but I remember when you came in, and there's been a lot of changes on the Environmental Commission, and we've got a lot accomplished. And I wish the commission a lot of luck, and Pat, I wish you all the best, and we'll keep in touch.
I'm sorry to deviate. I mean, here we are
What were we
discussing
talking
any
about?
articles for the newsletter, and again, the contact with the high school, and then saying that I did contact, have not received a feedback, but again, also in that email was letting Patrick Gain know, because I have been served as the contact person with Franklin High School for a number of events we've held, primarily renewable energy, which Linda, our chairperson, was a speaker at a couple of years ago at the Franklin Public Library. But again, the Franklin High School has junior and seniors that are enrolled in environmental classes, and again, I just thought what a wonderful opportunity for them to sort of get
a little bit of a feeling for how important it is to carry something beyond high school and look at the community and see what you can do. So again, it's been a real win-win. And again, you hate to have the Fadra room at the library set up for 100 chairs and maybe only fill 20 of them. So this way, with Mr. Gain there checking the list of students attending, shall we say, we've had very good attendance.
Yep, yeah, that was a good chair filler. Okay, I'm looking at looks like the deadline would be about April 15th for the May 20th newsletter. So, looks like we probably will not have anything for that.
Do we want to do something for Arbor Day? Or will it
It
go out
gets delivered May
after?
20th.
Yeah, and we had it in for the February. Yes, it was in.
Okay.
Speaking of Arbor Day, I looked at the website for the city about the Arbor Day event. It doesn't mention anything about a garden giveaway, doesn't mention anything about the seeds for children. I'd be happy to write something up and send it to you if that will be sufficient. And I'll try to get it out to you tomorrow. I just wanted to see what was there, and I was like, oh. So I will expand on it.
You know what you might do, Jim? The library has a monthly newsletter that they put out, and since they'll be hosting this, they might put a little article in there with the activities you're proposing. You want to contact Jennifer Leffel, the director of the library, and see if she will include that in the upcoming May newsletter, and that would still give, again, and they come out with that newsletter actually before the beginning of the month, so it'll come out maybe the last week of April or so. But
Okay.
that would be a recommendation.
There's I forget exactly, I don't look at it, but my wife loves the Franklin patch. And I think we could probably get something on there
Yeah.
promoting the event. And I know it will be in the Audubon Facebook page and anything else I can weasel my way onto.
Rip Pike Wind said they'd listed in their
Yeah,
list of events for
And
Franklin residents.
We might be able to get like John at Quinney's is the guy at Patch that does the local articles for Franklin, so we can contact him.
We've got the sign out front too, the
Yeah, the digital.
digital sign. I'm not sure who operates that, but maybe sometime before it could be a blurb on there.
As for the April 15th article, though, that we need, we could always reach out to the Conservancy because they are finishing their dock and their trails. And that might be something that we can, even though it's a nonprofit, I don't know if we want to promote their trail and dock work on the lake. But, and the students have, and the Franklin students have been working on it. So that might be an option to reach out to.
Okay.
So to date, then, we have no articles that we are submitting for the May issue.
That's
Right. And then just, since I'm looking at it, June 17th would be the next deadline for July, late July newsletter.
So that would be one by May.
Yeah, for our May meeting, if we want to take a look through it. Okay. Moving on, do we have any updates on Buckthorn Subcommittee and/or the survey that's out there?
Just waiting on the survey to be completed.
Yep, so it closes on the 31st. There's quite a few submissions in the library Dropbox and just a few in the Department of City Development. And then I checked the website, and there were a couple of big days, but there's a total of 282 completed surveys. on the online form. So I'm sure we'll have more than 300 submissions.
Excuse me, Marion, I'm having a hard time understanding you. You're not facing me and you've got a mask on. So what is the completion of number of surveys? Did you say 282?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, this mask is.
No, that's fine. It would be different, but you're not facing me.
And then an uncounted number at the library.
Okay. This is online. Reported 282.
I will note the library has been kind enough to just run them off, so they haven't asked me for more, and I appreciate that. So they've been very helpful.
Okay.
Does the subcommittee want to meet after the results, after the survey has closed, or do you want to wait until I have compiled a memo on the results of that memo, or that survey?
Let's wait until the results are ready.
Right, so I can provide you with the raw data on this first.
Yeah.
Or I can write a memo, which will take longer.
I'm cool with raw data. I don't know about you, Jim.
As compared to what?
To like a memo
Oh,
where it breaks it all out for us.
I like it. It will spit out pie charts, which are actually, I won't know until I've gone through it. I've never used this particular tool. But if there are problems with the data and I won't have time to code the manual responses for you, I started to go through and there's kind of a set, and normally I would do that, but that takes a while to do. So I can give you like a pie chart pretty quickly, but if you want like an analytical memo, I intend to provide that to the commission, but that will take longer.
It closes on the 1st, right? April
The 31st.
31st.
Yeah. So that's the last day.
And then our next meeting is April. I think we'll just wait till the next meeting because it's going to take you some time to compile that, and if you don't have all the handwritten responses ready, it's kind of, because I know a lot of people are doing, like I was at the library the other night and somebody was filling it out, like, and I was just in and out really quick, so.
Okay.
I think we might have a lot at the library because it's right when you walk out, so you see it as you're walking out. So,
if you want help, I'll be happy to come in and help you sort whatever.
That might be helpful. We have some administrative help to do data entry. You can just do it right in the form. I hadn't quite decided how I was going to handle that, so I will possibly take you up on that. I'll follow up, but thank you.
I did attend a meeting at Ware Nature Center about 2 weeks ago where the Buckthorn Survey actually came up at the Wild Ones program. And somebody piped up, are there other people from Franklin here? Because I have a question about the Buckthorn Survey. At which point I was deciding whether I should just sneak out the door or, but there seems to be some genuine interest in terms of, from the folks who do a lot of gardening and, nature stuff, shall we say, to partake in that survey. So I'll be very curious to see just how many results we got.
Yeah, and I should note, I've also fielded just under a dozen phone calls about it as well, with questions. What's the purpose of this? What's the policy goal? That kind of thing. So.
Do we have any sense as to how many responses we've gotten so far?
yeah,
Yeah.
about 300. We'll
Yeah.
Okay.
I suspect there's at least 30 in the box at the library, but I haven't. Actually, maybe I'll go grab it tomorrow and get started on them.
I think we're doing better than the question on the newsletter right now. Interesting.
Is there a mechanism to reach out to the business owners? Because I'm thinking no one in the business park or anyone gets the newsletters, and they may not be so much concerned because people may come from different areas into that. But if somebody knows that they are going to be affected,
Right. I will check about the distribution list for the newsletter, because I suspect it includes it's a list of property owners. In which case, yeah, I will have to check about the
Yeah,
distribution
yeah, no,
list.
that's-
But in that case, many businesses would have received it, but if they're tenants, they might not have, so.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I work in the business park, and the owner of that is, I think, in Brookfield or Pewaukee or somewhere.
Yeah.
If it goes there, they may not worry about it, but
I know it's kind of hindsight, but if we could have added, do you own a property? I think that's in there, right? If you own a property, but how large a property do you own? Because I had a resident reach out to me for multiple reasons, but she was kind of not upset, but she was just kind of like, if we have over 3 acres of land, we're not gonna be able to afford
Yeah.
to do that.
That was a question originally on there, and I think we took it off as we wanted to limit the amount of questions.
Yeah.
And really just focus it on like some educational pieces, like
Yeah.
do you know what it is, yes or no? And then just to give an idea of where we're at, because there can always be another survey, because we
Yeah.
know the people with 3 acres are not going to be able to
No.
remove that much buckthorn within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
After our last meeting, I remember hearing about the county parks invasive species document, and I just finished rereading it. And I don't know if the city, forestry or parks, has looked at it or considered adopting its guidelines, but it talks about, degrees of infestation, how much time you're going to need, whether it's 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Realistically, it is not a cheap process to remove large amounts of this stuff. But that document, I think it was 12 pages, but it was quite thorough in terms of suggesting different forms of remediation and timelines that the city could possibly adapt as either part of our ordinance or whatever we want to do. But it was well designed.
So our next meeting is April 27th. What do we want to finish up this Buckthorn? As far as the survey, we will have a presentation of the results of the survey at the April 27th meeting. Does that sound reasonable, Jerry? Okay.
Okay, moving on, item D, street tree list update. Do you have anything on that?
Nope, nothing
I think
new to
it was
report.
put on hold due to the UDO rewrite, is that correct?
That in combination with the grant that the city forester is working under, I don't remember the parameters of it, but that he's getting help from the DNR, et cetera, so.
Okay.
So we still have no update on this?
Right.
Yeah, we saw it, we looked at it, we provided input, but it's not completed yet.
There's no action
No
to move it on to the Common Council at this point. Okay, brings us to item E, participation in City Franklin Unified Development Ordinance Task Force.
Yep,
Which we had the 30-page memo.
I got it twice.
Ooh.
I was like, is this a new one?
oh, because you're getting packets, yep. So provided to you was a copy of the memo that will be posted on the UDO website, rewrite website. So it's a diagnostic memo. It focuses primarily on areas of nonconformity. Hang on a second. Areas of nonconformity with the zoning. There is a section on natural resources, but that actually there isn't as much to diagnose with that, if I may. Like, the standards are not, they're very substantially modeled on the DNR's requirements related to wetlands. And so at this point, there's not a lot to diagnose. There will be a set of recommendations to revision, so I'll remind the commission that there's a plan to essentially, it is a fairly substantial rewrite of the ordinances, so that when we get to the section about starting to make recommendations, et cetera, there'll be more for you guys to review. But I wanted to make sure that you had access to this since this is the starting point. So it is very zoning focused. I can answer some general questions about it. I have reviewed this, but thanks to Sherlock Holmes' theory of the brain, I might not remember what I read, so.
Okay, what we want to focus on, I believe, is Article 6, page 27,
Yes.
28, and 29. Our concern is the natural resource protection standards, Article 6, so I'm working on that.
Yeah.
In addition, I would add, on page 25, where we talk about landscaping standards, they are suggesting that we kind of redefine landscaping to be more eco-friendly, shall we say, and sustainable, with minimal things like fertilizer and required lawn treatments. I certainly hope that will be part of our discussion eventually. 27, page 27, 28, resource protection standards. I read through it, and I tend to agree with what they're suggesting, but it's, you know, it's kind of like, this is not going to be a quick and easy process.
I do have a quick question though. So under like tree protection and clearing and a couple other spots, they talked about in lieu of mitigation. Are those kind of like our conservation easements we have now? Or would that be separate?
Yeah, so right now we don't allow for what's called fee in lieu mitigation. We require mitigation to occur almost exclusively at the time of impact. So you have to do mitigation or restoration on site, or a plan commission can allow for it to occur off site at the time of impact. The DNR allows for what's called mitigation banking, where you purchase what's referred to as credits. It's essentially cash to then pay for wetland mitigation area elsewhere. And that's a fairly common practice. We're probably going to make a recommendation to allow for that kind of fee in lieu, especially because it is actually on-site mitigation can be very difficult for applicants to do if there are lots of constraints about the site. So like in the case before you this evening, they had spaces to put mitigation areas that were logical and would not have impeded in other things. But if there was another natural resource in that area, like trees, for example, there might be a trade-off. So,
And then just a quick, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but would that then be within Franklin? Or would that, we would keep it within Franklin, unlike I think the DNR allows you to do it almost anywhere.
In the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So they have certified wetland banks, and there are some rules actually where we cannot take precedence over the DNR and require local mitigation. That hasn't occurred since I started working here, but generally speaking, our ordinances require a stepped approval process, and we will be recommending probably something similar. If you cannot do mitigation on site, it has to be in the same watershed. I think that probably will persist. And then also, if not in the watershed, then still in the city. So the goal with the mitigation standards is that since the impact is happening here in Franklin, that the benefit also come to Franklin. But I think it is important not to lose sight of that idea, because that will be a part of the discussion of what we require.
Would we also be able to say like that fee could go towards, let's say, like we're doing the mitigation at the Water Tower Park parcel? And would that be something where we could say you could buy credits to help restore that specific if you're with it, like if you're outside of a certain watershed, you can't find a property or like for it, could we then say, okay, well, we do have this wetland resource that needs to be restored, but it's a park property.
Right.
Would that be something that then could be done?
I mean, I think that's an option. Right now, we require like for like.
Yeah.
So if you impact a wetland, you must then produce an area of wetland. The credits could be configured differently because we know that there are invasive impacts to allow for other kinds of restoration or wetland enhancement. There is no wetland bank in the city of Franklin. So that is there are a couple of different kinds of wetland banks, but generally speaking, it is an area where you expand or restore an area of previously existing wetlands, like remove drain tiles and that kind of thing, and then also do the plantings. But there is no such facility in Franklin. Could we put it in a park? Potentially. That's something that there's a long ongoing discussion about the possibilities of a wetland bank, but if you require like for like, it's going to be a little difficult to figure out where to do that.
Okay.
So the fees might allow for more flexibility. I hope that we go in that direction because it can be prohibitive.
Well, because I'm thinking like, too, like if you do take down a forest, okay, fine, you took down a forest, but we could have you go in somewhere else and do an invasive removal, which would be beneficial for what we're trying to do with Buckthorn, especially if a business isn't able to do one for one necessarily. Just thinking of like other ways we can use that money.
Okay, concern. The city of Franklin does not have a bank. What about some of the other outlying communities? Are we the only one?
They're not that common, in fact. So there's wetland restoration product. The DNR has like a certification process, and I actually don't know where the nearest one is.
All right, and then not necessarily in the same mindset as a bank, but where do we come in with this 1.5 mitigation ratio?
I mean, it's in the ordinances. I am not sure how they arrived at that number.
That seems subjective, sometimes in working with clients too, if we want to push instead of 1.5, we ask for 2. I'm just saying.
The ordinance currently is 1.5, and I will actually note that it's a requirement of area and it has no discussion of soils, plant types. You probably have heard high quality versus low quality. So like we treat a farm field exactly the same as something that could be like adjacent to, a pretty substantial natural resource area. So there is a level of subjectivity in that, even though it seems like it's a fixed thing, so.
And they did mention that how we should identify in our ordinances those various, like a top notch versus a low notch, just to make sure we know that.
I appreciate Jim pointing out that landscaping. I mean, I went right to Article 6, and that's what I basically read and focused on, but I think I got to take another look because there's a lot of possibly other areas that might be.
I was quite surprised to see it there, I'll be honest with you. I didn't think we were going that deep, but I think I'm starting
Thanks
to like
a lot.
these
Now
people.
I've got more to read.
So for the commission's information, some areas that might interest you in addition to landscaping is there will be changes upcoming to our local stormwater ordinance. The local sewerage district has changed their requirements and are requiring more green infrastructure for a much smaller amount of area of impervious surface. But then there will also be likely additional recommendations related to green infrastructure as we rewrite the UDO. So stormwater and engineering of sites. I don't remember if we get into a discussion of solar and the diagnostic, but there are no standards. So we will probably be thinking through what that looks like for commercial properties, residential, probably not so much as long as it meets the general requirements of the district. But it's worth reading the whole thing because you start to kind of put together, the commission could reasonably discuss zoning and how zoning, there are things in here called subdivision regulations. And when you plat a subdivision, you make decisions about how the roads are configured and how the lots are configured that then drive a lot of the impacts that you see. So for example, there will be probably an NRSE request in this commission in the future related to a development where, because of the configuration of the stormwater ponds, you've seen that before, but it's driven at least in part by the zoning, how the lots are set up, how the roads are laid out, all of that. So if you want to take it to that level, I would encourage you to do that, and I'm happy to answer more questions about that. All of the zoning has environmental consequences. What you choose to focus on is obviously the commission has a broad purview over that, but it's worth considering that, like, you know, lot sizes will influence land coverage and that kind of thing.
So to back up a minute, you talked about the wetland mitigation banks, and we don't currently have any. Do we have any plans to designate some? Can we designate some? Can we start to really look at that? And not necessarily just wetland mitigation, but mitigation in general, some areas that we could substitute the mitigation for developments. And certainly we've got many wetlands that we should be able to find for wetlands, but there's other areas for mitigation as well.
Yeah, so there's some complexity there. If I just focus on wetland banks, there has been a discussion that predates me about doing wetland banking in the southern portion of the city. There are some parcels that are potentially usable for that will be deeded to the city that are currently owned by Waste Management. So there has been a discussion of doing wetland mitigation in that location. The DNR evaluated that site and said that, you know, the possibility exists, but it would not be a site that they would then include in their roster of mitigation banks. So they would not choose to direct mitigation to that mitigation bank. So we could use it for our own, to meet our own requirements. It's an expensive proposal, but that's part of the rationale for the fee in lieu. So that discussion has been ongoing. I don't have the expertise to like talk through what other sites might be appropriate for that.
Why is it expensive?
It requires continuing maintenance after you do the initial build out of the wetlands.
Well,
So-
could part of the mitigation substitution be financing
Yep.
for it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, that's the idea behind the fee in lieu. So
Idea what?
the fee in lieu, that's the general
Okay,
idea.
okay. It seems like this commission should be where this is driven from.
Yeah.
The UDO, it's great if they're going to designate. It's great if the DNR is going to designate too, but maybe this commission should do some designation of mitigation areas. And I don't know how you would begin to start listing them for consideration.
Yeah, my first criteria would be probably that it be city-owned property. Would be maybe the most logical place to start.
City-owned or conservancy?
Potentially, yeah, and that has happened before where offsite mitigation has occurred in conservancy areas. So there is precedence for that, and it's something that we can allow, but then that becomes a private agreement. You know, we can't just, we could designate.
What about the, like the area on 116th Street, the MMSD property there, or whatever that is again?
Yeah, MMSD ceded those to the Milwaukee Area Land
That's
Conservancy.
it, Milwaukee Area Land Conservancy. What about some areas like that?
So I think that is like an existing prairie. So, and I don't know the condition of it, but it is the kind of area that if we were looking at doing prairie restoration as part of the fee and lieu process, you know, it might be logical to do that. There's also, actually, MMSD owns quite a lot of land in that general
Right,
area with
right.
wetlands and various conditions. So coordinating with MMSD they'd probably love that. So I am not sure, I'm not sure how that process would work to designate land. We do not have like a conservancy zoning classification, but parkland is kind of an obvious place to do that. And then in terms of land use, there's lots of areas of the city that are designated as natural resources on the future land use map. But they range from private to public, kind of all over the place, so.
and I don't suggest this is going to be something that's going to happen quickly, but I do, we struggle sometimes when we're talking with developers for mitigation on site, and it would be great if we had an alternative for them.
Oh, yeah, we need leverage.
Yes. Yes.
I wonder if this fee in lieu option might be a good question for their natural resource person, because she was very knowledgeable, especially with what they were doing outside of Madison, within Madison. So she might have some ideas of how we can kind of do that work.
So you're asking if they could provide us with like a case
Yeah,
study?
could you just, if you wouldn't mind emailing her just with some of those questions of like, with the fee in lieu of idea, like having that offsite. Like what are some of the programs that have been used that she knows of to kind of give us an idea of what we could do with that.
Yep, I can follow up with her about that.
Anything at this point on UDO rewrite?
I don't know when the next meeting will be. It hasn't, I don't know if it's been scheduled yet or not.
It
so,
hasn't. We've
okay.
been doing, like identifying any conservation easements that we know of specifically because they're not identified. There's like not a list of them. So we were asked to go back in the map and kind of, if we knew about them, identify them. That was the last email we got.
I think there's one to the east of me.
Okay.
All right. Funding for environmental commission activities.
I brought mine back.
Yay!
I even cleaned it up a little bit and like, because you had like events, so I was like, oh, okay. I don't know what this means, but. And I didn't add it up at all, by the way.
Sorry, what?
I didn't like add it up or anything. Like, it's very like based on what Jim gave me about like the garden stuff and the seed packets. I added literature for public events, but like obviously don't know the printing costs, and then community events. I said it would depend on the number of events. I said like, oh, we need no more than $50 to get waters and beverages, like. So that's what I did. I don't know if I'll pass it down to Pat.
Let me take
Kind of see what I did for that. And I started filling out actually at the last meeting and then made some revised revisions to it. So I tried just adding it up and thinking about it, so.
Tom, the gentleman that was
Yeah, we need this template is good. We need something. Yeah, certainly.
There was one in the packet, so everyone should have
Yeah,
gotten.
no, I
Okay.
definitely,
Yeah, they didn't say
I will give that to you
They never spoke.
because I'm very content with it. So
I emailed you a few items. It sounds like a lot of overlap with that. Did you see those?
Yep.
Mary? Okay.
All right, I've got that. So at this step, if folks want to just kind of, we can brainstorm now and I can add that to the list. Or if you want to hand this back to me, that'd be awesome. If your handwriting is good. And then, so the commission understands the process. So a formal request has to be completed no later than August 1st, but preferably by July 1st. So you should have a recommended budget request by the June meeting. So with that in mind, what month is it?
March.
It's March. April, May, June. So I would like to get you a proposed budget at the next meeting based on your suggestions, because I may have to vet some of them with other departments. So for example, the Department of Public Works may have some known costs. The way that this works is it has to be based on a realistic understanding of what something's going to cost. And then you can put forward the request. So I do have a suggestion for the commission. Based on, you have previously adopted a motion to receive your packets electronically unless there was a natural resource special exception. Currently, you're all using your personal devices to do that. If you wanted, you could include, and I would recommend that, I kind of want to suggest to you that it might be appropriate to request devices that would belong to the city but be used for your commissions, so that you can view your packets without having to use your personal devices, especially since there's some rules about using your phones and stuff in meetings now. But also with the idea of modeling, because no other commission has adopted that policy.
That actually would be smart, because I know there's some, like, for Dropbox, when you open it, sometimes you have to download it, so it takes up a lot of RAM, or drive, or I don't know what it is.
So these would be like an iPad, a tablet, something like that, that you would have kind of for the duration of your term? Not like you go and pick it up, meeting, turn it back in after a meeting or something.
That was what I was envisioning.
That you'd have it for 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, so we as staff think there would be a lot of advantages to that for you guys, and then also for us just feeling confident that the materials are legible.
Yeah.
So,
I'll take my thing, but I'll add it to mine.
Now, can I just get a rethink here? So we were mentioning the deadline for budget requests for 2022 is August 1st?
that is what I would refer to as the drop deadline. So
The drop deadline.
you had the absolute last.
The deadline for budget requests for 2022, shall I say between July 1st and August 1st, just to, okay.
Yep. So I would suggest that you guys arrive at a budget that you're all comfortable
Alright.
with requesting at the July meeting. Sorry, at the June meeting.
Marion, I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you from here. I was going to ask you if I could assist in delivering these huge commission packets. I mean, you've spent almost $10 having it mailed 6 blocks to me, and I'd be happy to deliver them all for
And I,
free.
like I say, I live so close, I'd be happy to walk over.
Yeah.
Yeah, or we could just.
Yeah, some days I
stop
think it
by.
almost be fat. Like if you told me the packet was ready and I know that thing's open till 5 and you let I could just come and grab it, it would just be easier.
If the commission wants, I can, so our secretary handles the distribution process, and we hand deliver plan commission for environmental commission. I can ask if that's an option. I would appreciate it, but I don't know what the response will be. So that's, thank you.
Can we get a mail slot in a building somewhere, and, you know?
Well, generally, if anything, it's kind of just left at the it's left at the front desk, so
That's
we just
fine.
come and grab it. And if they put in a big manila, like one of those orange envelopes or whatever color envelopes those are, like with our name on it, I think it would be easy enough for us to grab.
I could see about a mail slot. The aldermen have one, but I presume that they have keys also. So
Yeah.
Maybe we have to budget it.
Okay. Mail slots
Budget
and
mail
keys.
slots.
I'll put keys down. I'm not gonna do that. It would be nice if it's not something that's questionable, or if someone can't make it. Like I know I can't. Some days, I won't be able to make it here in time by 5 o'clock. But if we could just, and I know some days we're running late on packets because things get changed. So, but if it is a possibility to have that available, I would be more than willing to stop at the city hall. That way your face is seen, you get to see what's going on, the Christmas decorations, the St. Patrick's Day decorations,
Or this though.
Yeah, you always come in through the front door and walk down, otherwise you miss everything.
So I have a suggestion for the budget. Could we create like a major project fund? Meaning if we had like a area in Franklin that is like a wetland or something that Franklin owns, that's just sitting there, right? Not doing anything. It's something maybe we could build up a fund for that we might want to work on in the future. That's just one example. Maybe there's something else, but where we can actually build up some kind of fund, and then if we see a need, we can then apply it and then say, hey, the Franklin Environmental Commission is doing this for the city.
Almost like a grant. So then even an organization could come to us and ask.
Yeah. And I don't know if we really talked about how we're going to, I know we're going to maybe just going to ask money from the Franklin. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but I don't know if this is, I'm new to this, but I'm just wondering about, can we get money from like these developers. They come in and go, well, we want to take away X amount of wetlands. So we say, you know what, if you're taking away that, we're going to take 10% of that you need to give back to Franklin, you know, to a certain charity or a fund for us to use for something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
you
think
know,
that's what the in lieu of would
and so-
be,
yeah,
if we added that to the ordinance.
Yeah.
Because in that way, you know, even if it's a fee in lieu of, then it could be the option to have like a grant
Right.
system
Right.
for other, like natural resources, the conservancy or
yeah,
anything like that, and then it can be a grant. So if someone comes in and says, hey, we're gonna be working on this property, or somebody that has 3 acres of property and they wanna get rid of Buckthorn,
right,
that would be an option to give them grant money to get rid of that Buckthorn.
Yeah.
Like, they come in here with that you know, that process, what they're gonna do, who they're gonna use, and we say,
Right.
okay, yeah, we'll give you, you know, that fund, or however much it is, it just has to be approved. So then that way we can, you know, be a little bit more on top of the Buckthorn, but then also be able to provide funds for individual homeowners or whatever
Right.
to do it. That actually, like, that fee in lieu of would actually be really beneficial, I think. Because then we would allow, like, have an understanding, like, this development needs to go in. Like, this last one, the development needs to go in. Like, they're not gonna make money if they only put 6 apartments on it. But, like, we could at least, you know, we could have gotten, yeah, you're filling it in, so you're gonna give us this much money. So, and that could have fixed another project.
yeah. Well, I look back at there was a project last year where, like, this project here was really good, where they didn't really impede on the wetlands very much.
Yeah.
But there was a project last year where there was a big area because they wanted to get 3 more houses in or something.
Yeah.
Like, that's money in their pocket. And what's the city doing? We're getting nothing out of the deal. I mean, more tax money, don't get me wrong. You know, this is getting above our
Yeah.
commission. But I'm just saying, like, hey, let's,
Yeah, I think that we
Let's
should
get some-
really look forward
Yeah.
to the fee in lieu of. Because it's
Yeah.
like the credit, like I know they do that too for like LEED certification. So like if your building isn't necessarily green, you can buy like credits or property so you can get those points to be LEED certified. So it'd almost be like the same thing, is that you would get, you know, you're buying or you're paying credits towards a environmental thing that you're not gonna be able to do on your certain property. It's actually really smart. It makes sense to identify areas of greater need versus fixing a property that doesn't have any actual impact. So,
Will that money strictly be used? I mean, is there a guarantee or a?
well, I think that's what we would have to identify in the UDO process, is where that money goes and how that fee money is utilized. And that's all within the UDO, because then that way it has a specific line that it's gonna go to. So whether we have like a escrow account or whatever you would wanna call that. And then there would be specific recommendations and needs for that. So you wouldn't be able just to come in here and be like, hi, my name is Jamie and I am going to fix the wetland in my property. Can I have $1,000? Like, it would have to be a process of who are you working with? What means are you doing it for? What is the general cost?
No, what I meant was within the city, would some other entity take that?
I don't think so. I think that's part of the fee in lieu of it would have to stay within the environment, like an environmental mitigation of some sort. So like, Marion was talking about like a 1-to-1, so wetland to wetland. Well, we can maybe say natural resource to natural resource. So it could be wetland to a mature tree grove. It could be wetland to a prairie, where that way they're all natural resources, or even a floodplain maybe, like if we have something going on with a river issue or whatever, like it would be for a natural resource, not for like, oh, we're now gonna take it for the roads, or DPW is not gonna take it. I think it would have to be solidified within a natural resource type need. So there's a lot of ideas I think we could do with it. It's just we have to make sure it's legal.
Yep.
And that's the part I think where accessing other people would be beneficial. But I think it's a really fun idea. I think it would be great. Having grants for people to clean up their buckthorn.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
yeah.
So, fun stuff coming ahead.
Okay, so get any additional ideas to Marion on budget items?
Yep, so fill out the worksheet, or if you want to just email me, if you have an idea of the cost of something, please make sure to include that. So like, I had the example of the rain garden.
I'll give you this back. I submitted it before, but I still had a copy, so was my original habitat restoration project
Here you go.
proposal.
And then here you go. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, back to new business items. B, I think, Tom, you had the request for a speaker in May to a third grade class?
Yeah, I messaged her and she said she was gonna be here tonight, but I don't see her.
Okay.
April 17th. Or right, is that when we, 27th?
Who was this? Do we have someone coming
I can,
for this request
Tom-
for a speaker?
Tom received a request
yeah.
to have someone come in and speak to a third grade class.
Okay,
Her name was Mrs. Baker. She, the teacher at Pleasant View.
okay, you know who does fantastic work with kids programs is We're Nature Center. Howard April is a good contact. He works with a lot of children's programs at We're Nature Center. But they are definitely geared. Right now, you know, they've got the maple sap collecting days for families
Yeah.
and everything like that. Tom,
Well,
I would
I want-
definitely defer to We're Nature Center.
Right. I just want her to come because, you know, when we talked last month was third graders, right? Like, what are they looking for? I mean, like pictures? I mean, because you can't start talking about wetland. I mean, I don't know what can probably be
No,
over
but
their
again,
head.
I think of
so.
a third grader, I think of my great nephews, my great niece, and I think, oh, pollinator, you know, wildflowers, pollinators, something like getting
Yeah,
out with native
butterflies.
plants, something that they can
Yeah.
engage with and kind of see the interaction. So,
Hand out seeds for gardeners.
I would do those resources, or even Root Pike Wind might be able to do something, because I remember it was about the development, like how has development changed
Yeah.
the city? And they might be able to speak more on like how the rivers have changed because of the city. Because you don't like, just something very basic, and
Yeah.
they can see how water changes,
Right.
some aerial photography and stuff,
They have their model.
right? You can bring in a stream model for them.
I was going to offer to do it, to be honest with you. I would combine some Audubon photography and some wild ones, natural plant information, and some city Buckthorn issues and a few other things. And you know, being an officer at Audubon helps. So, but some of the groups, Howard April, he's great, but the man is spoken for a lot.
Yeah. I would just reach out to her and see what she needs, and then from there,
Yeah.
like Jim's available, and
Yeah.
then
Okay.
she probably wants
Yeah,
somebody from
thanks,
the
Jim.
city to
Because
come.
I do.
Well, you're a good-looking man too. I think she might be.
Well, and you're very well connected. Audubon, Wild Ones, Environmental Commission.
so suggestions besides We're Nature Center, did someone say
Rootwood, Pike, and then Jim.
I nominate Jim.
I would say, yeah, Jim.
Yeah,
would
it's
do it.
something simple. Keep it easy.
Yeah.
You know, can't use words like mitigation because
And
we're
we're
not going to know
gonna
what that
make
means.
Yeah.
sure when these minutes come out that the name Commissioner
What?
Cieslik is in bold.
Okay, moving on. Future cleanup event with Rit Pike Win.
Could I ask, Madam Chairman, what is this document for?
We'll get there. It's about
That's
the
the
overview
F,
of
conservation easements.
Oh,
It took me a minute to
Sample,
okay.
sample
Oh, a
of
sample,
conservation
all right.
easement.
okay.
I make a motion to close the meeting.
To close it,
Yeah.
to end it,
End the meeting. Yeah.
No.
to end it?
Are you done?
Yeah. We just push it off next month.
No.
No. Okay. I'm just putting it out there.
We'll talk fast. A copy of the email that Christine sent to a few of us, following up from last month's meeting. And there was the mention of a river section that had lots of tires and whatnot in it. So Rip Pike Wind is wondering, do we want to do some type of a cleanup event? And more specifically, like where? So that is the topic. I don't remember exactly where that section of river was that was in the presentation.
So the section of river in the presentation was part of the Root River watershed, so it was over by 35th Street.
Like Minnesota or something.
Yep.
Oak Creek watershed.
35th and what, folks?
So Minnesota doesn't go all the way through there, but it's like Minnesota.
I know, by Pleasant, what's the name of the school there?
Pleasant View or
Pleasant View?
She put
Okay.
it in here for us. Southwood Glen. This is what, according to the Oak Creek plan, this is west of Southwood Glen. No, that's not it. Southwood Glen was the fecal matter.
Yep.
I can pull a picture up for you. It's just north of where, it's on 35th, just north of Northwest Mutual. Because Northwest owns a property just to the east of it.
Oh,
Is the property just behind the Northwestern Mutual Life?
Yeah, pretty much.
oh, thank you. Yes. Because when I was reading the minutes from February, I was trying to, on 35th
Picture it.
Street, trying to picture.
Yeah, it's pretty well hidden back there.
Marquette,
Yes.
35th and Marquette.
35th and Marquette,
And then like
thank you.
technically I believe Madison is the specific location that they're looking to do because that's where the stream goes straight. And then they're gonna meander it, so there's some go in and do a natural or re-meander it.
Okay, you know, you live in Franklin for almost 30 years and you think you know
I can search it
every
up for you.
neighborhood, and I especially, since I've been an active biker, you know what I'm saying, and yeah.
I think Marion's got it up on the
Yeah.
screen up here.
You can't see the stream, but it's here.
Yeah.
Kinda,
Meanders down.
so.
Okay, so then we've got 27th, we've got Northwestern Mutual, we've got, okay. Is it right off of Drexel?
I mean, if you want, I'll contact Root
Actually,
Pike
it's off
Win.
of Rawson.
More Rawson, more the
Custom.
Rawson area,
More Rawson.
more Rawson, further north, got it, okay.
And then if you go up a little bit, they're also doing, on that property that has a big flat spot, MMSD is gonna be putting in a water or wetland in that general area to help with, stormwater. And so it's going through a big old process of one of their programs, and they have a company working with them on it that does this stuff, I guess. So, based on a little bit of literature that I've looked up and read on it. So it looks like it's a little interesting project that they're doing, because there is an ability for that to be a wetland, and that's what they're going to be doing, like is making it into a wetland area. It's kind of a neat concept.
And again, that is west of Northwestern Mutual.
West,
Okay.
yeah, northwest. That's all owned right up. Behind the Statesman, that's what, right by the Statesman.
Oh, the apartments.
Yes, the
Uh-huh.
apartments that just went in.
Are there any other areas or locations that we're aware of? Or
If you want, I'll contact Root Pike Win. I'm also one of their volunteers for projects like this.
Yeah.
And find out what they had in mind. And I know it's not going to be within the next 30 days, so.
I think a nice summer day would probably be better if we're gonna be in waders and whatnot, because that way if you get a little wet, you're not.
If you haven't budgeted for waiters yet, I won't have
Right.
Oh,
we have to get,
Well, they said waders. Did they say we have to get them, or do they have them?
I'll be surprised if they
We can
haven't.
get our own food, we don't need waiters.
Yeah, I'll just go in. Just come on, over the chacos and just go in.
well, they had, did you see the email that they had sent us, Jim?
I think I did, but
It was, from what was brought out in the presentation, did we want to do
Yeah.
something about that section of the river or any other areas?
Yeah.
Um,
And then the fecal canine, I think that we should say, yes, please show us it. And then I believe that's Sherry's area. So then, or Alderwoman Hennemans, so then we could also let her know that a mailing would be going out about that.
We want to review their mailer.
Yeah. But I think that would be smart to put out.
Yep, I agree with that. I didn't know if
then-
we needed to review it. I think it was kind of standard stuff that they put out, but
Yeah, I
we
don't-
can.
But I don't know, when are they gonna stop picking it up?
assuming I find out anything, I'll contact you, Marion.
And then native plant ordinances.
That's part of the UDO process, so we might just want to be like, yeah, I do
Yeah,
have a list.
that's way down the road, I think.
Yeah, but it's way down the road. We can even let her know that, like, we're not near that yet, but a list of what you would consider natives or good natives for this area would be appreciative.
I'm thinking that's on their website.
I think it is too, so I'm not sure.
All right.
Okay.
And then the native habitat restoration project, I think with the revised minutes, no action at this point. We're gonna see the other projects going on. Perhaps down the road, we can come up with another project. That brings us to the overview on conservation easements.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to breeze through this, and I realize it can be kind of technical sometimes, so feel free to stop me. So in your packet, at the previous meeting, you received a copy of the template that the city distributes to anyone who's required to do a conservation easement. They are required both through the natural resource special exception process and through other kinds of development processes. So there are conservation easements that are the result of developments that you may not see. Most frequently, those are site plans or land divisions, meaning, I'm gonna take this off. Site plans or land divisions, meaning a subdivision plat, a certified survey map, the kinds of documents that planning reviews so that people can split up property to create a parcel that can change ownership. So the ordinances require that natural resources be protected either at that, what's called the platting step, the land division step, or at the site plan where someone puts forward a development plan. Here's what the building's gonna look like, here's what the landscape's gonna look like, etc. So kind of the essential things with conservation easements is the property owner retains ownership of that property. So it's not changing the shape of the lot. So if, for example, you know, well, I have an example of, this is the high school. And so you often see these natural resource protection plans. One of the things that's required to be shown on the NRPP is the boundaries of the property itself. So you can see they're here, they're a little bit hard to distinguish, but the property boundary is there. Within that, the easement then creates an area with certain restrictions on it. But the property ownership is still held by whoever it is that owns the whole parcel. So the purpose of the easement is to provide for legal protection for those natural resources. So Franklin is not the only community that does this. They are very common in places like Minnesota where there are watersheds that are protected on individually held, like personal property. So someone's backyard could have a conservation easement. That's very common in Franklin. It's very common elsewhere. It's recorded with the Milwaukee County Register of Deeds. So it's a binding property document similar to a deed or a certified survey map that has the force of law, that it's gone through kind of this chain of review. And I didn't note this here, but they must be accepted by the common councils because it is an agreement between the government of Franklin, the city of Franklin, and the property owner. So the common council reviews and adopts all of the conservation easements regardless of their source. So then you produce a document, and that's what you received is what's a copy of the recorded conservation easement on the high school. As an example, this is a binding property document. They are permanent unless both the property owner and the city agree to alter or dissolve it. So there are cases where that might occur for one reason or another. You know, if the natural resource ceases to exist, or if there is a development proposal. But we haven't worked on one of those in my tenure. But as you may recall, there was an NRSE before you that had impacts to wetland setback and buffer for a condo development, one of the requirements of that was actually a change to an existing conservation easement. The end result of that approval included that. So it is possible to alter them, but strongly recommend against it because it's complicated. And because it would also impact the natural resources. So, but anyway, okay. So the grantee in this document, so the document that you received is pretty much the same as what the template looks like, but the grantee is the City of Franklin. And so the City of Franklin has the right to view the protected property, to enforce the requirements of the conservation easement, which are referred to as covenants, and then to enter the property to inspect it. So we occasionally get requests that we have to notify the property owner like over a longer period of time, and that change is a common one. But, you know, that we don't just go there to enforce. But the language in it allows us to inspect the property if we need to do so. So the standard covenants prohibit any kind of structure in the conservation easement. So our ordinances already prohibit certain kinds of development and certain kinds of natural resources, but this takes it a step farther to make it part of this recorded property document. There are other cases where that can occur that are not easements, but this is probably the most frequent one. So it prevents buildings or structures, construction of any improvements. So that means like a fence or, you know, putting up signage, birdhouses, that kind of thing. You cannot install fill or change the topography in a conservation easement. Or remove any vegetation. We do make exceptions for dead or diseased trees, and so the city forester actually pretty frequently inspects because, as you know, the emerald ash borer has had a significant impact in the community, and that's a request that we get pretty often. Can the city forester verify that the trees are dead, and then we'll remove them? And that is something that's allowed without like a complicated approval process. So the depositing fill or any other materials, and changing the vegetation, and then also the use of motorized vehicles. So these are the standard conditions that are in any conservation easement. There are occasionally additional covenants added, or minor changes made to this based on the specifics of the site. So for example, with the NRSE that you heard this evening, because there will be conflicts between the stormwater easement and the conservation easement on the mitigation areas, we may allow for like, you know, changes related to mitigation or related to the stormwater easement. I'm not totally sure what that language will look like yet. So that's just kind of an overview of like what's in the template. I wanted to provide you with an example. So you received a copy of the Natural Resource Protection Plan. The high school went through an NRSE process in 2015 for the expansion of their fields, and so they impacted a wetland, wetland setback and buffer, and then there were some developments that later occurred in Zone X is actually not considered federally regulated floodplain, although this is the 500-year floodplain. But the resulting conservation easement, I wanted you to see that it kind of coordinates. So it's gonna, I didn't put north arrows again, sorry guys. This is north. So
It's pretty simple. If you like drive by, you're looking at the high school. Like if you're at the bottom, you're looking at it.
yeah, so this is
It's like 51st Street.
51st Street. This
Drexel.
is north. And so Drexel. There is a stream here. We require conservation easements on floodplain, and there is also what's referred to as a shoreline setback, which is 75 feet from the high water mark, basically. And so in the case of this easement, you can see that, so now in this is north. So Drexel's up here, 51st Street is here. This is the line of the easement. This is the exhibit that gets produced that goes with the document. So this here is protecting the floodplain. There are wetlands here. And then farther south on the property, there's a match line in the middle, is the wetland area that remains. So there's 3 easement areas. This is a meets and bounds, so it's basically a survey of that line. So when we talk about wetland delineations or other kinds of delineations, it's a surveyor's line that's been drawn as the result of a biologist's assessment of where those natural resources are. So part of the role that city staff plays is to make sure that this exhibit matches the NRPP. And there's often debate about that, but generally speaking, that's one of our responsibilities, is to make sure that it matches and that it also meets the legal requirements that are upon these documents, because they are, as I mentioned earlier, recorded. So the template is something that there are, as I mentioned, we have made changes to it over time, and occasionally make changes to it based on special circumstances. But it's been in this format since 2019, so I'm not sure if we will propose changes to it as part of the UDO rewrite process. I know this commission has also discussed maybe wanting to add requirements related to protecting native plants, even if they're not protected under the ordinances or that kind of thing. So if you have questions or suggestions, we can sort of talk about what that might look like.
I have a question. There just seems to be something on the part of the grantor, in this case Franklin Public School District, by abiding by this conservation easement, that they could claim this as a tax deduction?
No. So I am not totally sure how this works, but to my knowledge, this does not affect the assessed value of the property. So the assessor's office has like a process to produce assessments that's based on the improvements in the value of the land, but they retain ownership of the property. It does not get ceded to the city of Franklin, so they're still responsible for. I mean, in this case, it's not a for-profit entity, and I don't think they pay taxes on the school, but.
Maybe not in this case, but what about in, for example, in a developer's case where a conservation easement is in effect, by going along with that easement and not building or not imposing any type of disturbance to an area where they could have, I think they can claim that.
So there is a broad set of laws and regulations over what's called most commonly takings. And this is not my area of expertise, but a few things to note are that this happens typically at a step in the development process where we're enforcing ordinances that already exist elsewhere, so it's an added layer of protection, and those are defensible. And they are not affecting the value of the property in a sense that, like, we're taking away something from that property owner. So there's a lot of case law around takings in particular. And this is when Commissioner Gorak refers to it being defensible. This is an area where that is something that planning and the city attorney are responsible for making sure that we meet those requirements.
Yeah, I was going to say, boy, you got to have a
Yep.
CPA and an attorney. Yeah, this definitely is. Can get very snarly.
Yep. So, I mean, we wouldn't put a conservation easement on a not a protected natural resource. So it always goes over, there's that table in the ordinances that you always see. These are our protection standards. And then those remaining natural resources are then protected in the conservation easement. So it's an added layer of protection. There are some disadvantages to doing this, but the property owner is already prohibited from doing development without approval. So this then formalizes that. It's a recorded property document.
Yeah, thank you for this. Otherwise, I've kind of looked at this term and it just kind of floated out there. Maybe I can use it in a crossword puzzle, but just
Yeah.
all joking aside.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of things to consider, and we do hear that often, so that the protection of natural resources then makes development more expensive or makes it not possible to develop a site as the developer would desire. And that's why we tend to do the conservation easement process as much as possible in a way that, like, while still substantially protecting the resources that our ordinances require, also allows for development. So there's a balancing act, and it is something that developers find incredibly frustrating. Some of them more than others. Some of them are more willing to go through the process and work with us to make sure that we're doing the ordinances and the natural resources justice. And then you, as the commission, also have a review role there as well. So, because my role is primarily to enforce the ordinances written. So. So there are examples of this throughout Franklin, and you guys don't get to see this because this happens, as I said, at the end. Most often, there could be a circumstance where I would have a reason to bring an easement to you if there was a question that remained unresolved. If you wanted to see them more often, like for proposals that you're reviewing, that's something that I'd be open to including in your packets. But I mean, it would at that point when it's reached the end of the line, common council has to adopt the easement, but you can also make recommendations about what could be included in the easement. So if it meets the ordinances and is agreeable to the developer, otherwise. So for example, if there was like a prairies are not currently protected, maybe they would consider that.
So we could suggest in the UDO rewrite.
Yep.
Getting removal of invasives being another condition that's in the conservation easement. And then the use of natives. Plantings. So make that happen.
I already talked to them about stuff.
It's already in the works.
Yeah.
Okay.
The lady's really good. She's like seriously really good. Like
Yes.
wow, really like the natural resource. Like
This
she
is
was
like threading the needle, isn't it?
well, yeah, but like the stuff she came up, even like her thought process on some things was like, oh, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Wow.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that the particular team that we're working with, the UDO rewrite on, was selected is because that consultant is a subcontractor who has a specialty in natural resource protection, because Franklin takes that so seriously. And she is very good.
Yeah. Where are they out of? Where's that company out of? That HAV?
Houseil Levine
Yeah.
is in Chicago. They produced the UDO update that was just completed in Oak Creek. And they do this throughout the country. And then Birchline is JB, and she is like an independent contractor, she has worked extensively with the local sewerage district, who they have very strong stormwater and wetland protections, but has also worked throughout the country. So they're,
Okay.
so far we're quite pleased with everyone, so.
No, they're and she'll even we're talk about projects that have been done like in Madison. I think she talked about
great at
Madison
things
or like
like this. Yep.
Middleton. I think as well was one of the ones she mentioned in the talk. So yeah, she has extensive, and we even asked if there was like a new ordinance that came out, and it was like, well, is there a way of writing that we will always follow this ordinance? Like, if the state increases the platform or whatever, is there a way of writing that in an ordinance? Because there was was it a new wetland ordinance that just came out, or like the
From the
state?
DNR, you mean?
Yeah, the DNR just did something new,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, can we just keep whatever that standard is over and over and over again, like, because it's a good standard. It's actually more than what we have now, and so wouldn't that just be appropriate to make sure that we're matching whatever the state is offering versus trying to write our own? So, yeah,
Okay.
I don't remember specifically that conversation.
Comments, questions?
I passed out the most recent copy of our Audubon chapter newsletter, partially because I'm its editor, and partially because almost all our programs are here in Franklin. And I'm going to provide you with copies of the quarterly newsletter. You don't have to join. You know, if you'd like to contribute, we will be happy to take your money, but I want you to be aware of at least what one organization is doing within the community in the neighborhood here. This guy over here, if you're on Facebook and you haven't already friended the Friends of Grobschmidt, you should. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on over there. So I certainly encourage you to include them in your Facebook wanderings if you wish to. Also, I'm going to invite any of you who are interested in joining me. I do a eagle nest observation weekly in Caledonia that goes through Madison Audubon to the DNR. It is one of about 8 nests in Racine County that are monitored by volunteers. If any of you are interested in coming along, let me know. You'll find my name, email address, and probably my phone number somewhere in there. And you're welcome to call me.
Do you know what day you do it on usually?
What's that?
What days do you normally do it?
Normally on a nice day when I wake up early. But, I mean, if somebody says, hey, you know, I'd like to go tomorrow or the Sunday morning, or if you hear the forecast is, you know, whatever, let me know. I'll try to accommodate you.
So how long are you observing it, like?
I usually stay for an hour, but it overlooks I think it's called the Nicholson Wildlife Refuge in off of Highway 38, just south of Highway 38 in Caledonia. It's a gorgeous spot, and we have access to this lady's private residence property. And on a nice day, I'd take a lawn chair, my binoculars, and a cup of coffee, and keep track of all the birds. But, and I turn in a report, so I'll be happy to include you. I have a question about, we had 2 guests here today. I don't know who they are. Lady with the Air Force hat and the elderly gentleman. I would hope we would encourage them to at least identify who they are. And, you know, even if they just want to sit here and listen, that's fine. But it would be nice to recognize citizens who take the time to come out and join us.
I did go up to each one and make sure they had an agenda. Jim, I went up to each one.
Did you?
And make sure, because they didn't know to really pick up an agenda.
Oh.
And I said, here, you might like to follow more closely with this agenda.
Yeah.
But I did not take their names. If one of them, you know.
I mean, if they don't want to, that's fine, but I would encourage them.
Again, there were 2 citizens present, and I will have that in the minutes, but again, there was no citizen comment.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the gentleman in the hat was Leroy Lewandowski.
And he's been a member of this,
Was he?
hasn't he?
Before my time, I believe.
Before, I
so,
think so, yes, before my time too.
And I don't know who the other gentleman.
The gentleman over here, his name is Tom Wild. He's the association president for Mckenzie Square Condos by Lake Ernie. He and his group are very active at Lake Ernie. Buckthorn is one of their interests, and I suspect he might have been here for that, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him.
Commissioner, did he come to one of the Buckthorn
What's that?
committee meetings? We had a citizen come to one of the.
No, that was he lived off of over by Root River.
Oh, okay.
I got his name there in the minutes, or in the document. He wrote down his name.
Okay, any other items we want on the next agenda? I inadvertently left off the solar item, but we didn't have any extra time anyway. But presuming we don't have major items, I will bring that back to the next agenda.
I will have an update for you.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
No, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It
Anyone
was
opposed?
you that made the motion?
Yep.
And
Dan seconded,
Yeah.
okay, and time is what, 8:59? We don't
Sure.
want to say that, we don't want to say a
You want-
2-hour meeting.
59.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to say a 2-hour meeting, 8:59, real good.
Thanks, everyone.